Welcome to Cafecito con Prospanica. This is our weekly space where we can raise our voices and be heard. It's a short amount of time, but we like to spend it together so we can talk through different ways to really help us understand our current context. It's changing all the time, and if you're like me, it may feel sometimes like your focus just shrinks or your outlook gets a little cloudy. And so I'm excited today for the content we're bringing because it's a great chance to look at how we can affect change just within the way we see the world and the way we perceive the experiences we're in. So my name is Evan Cleveland. I'm the Director of Programming here at Prospanica, and you may not know much about who we are. So let's take a second to tell you we are a non-profit association. What that means, we have chapters and members all across the United States and Puerto Rico. We are dedicated to supporting Latino professionals in their work and their personal lives as well. There's all sorts of amazing stuff happening. There's not just the national office, so you can see things happening with our chapters across the country. For instance, Prospanica Denver is doing an amazing webinar coming up on mindsets with David Morelli. He's presented at our leadership summit a few times. He's an amazing presenter, lots of great content there. Prospanica Silicon Valley is doing a webinar talking about what to do if you feel like a cultural misfit at work. It's going to be really exciting content. Prospanica New Jersey is talking with Prudential about financial literacy. You can find out about all of this and more if you go to our website, prospanica.org. You can go to programs and events, click down on that and see the calendar. You can also check out all of our chapters' web pages and follow them on social media as well to see all the great stuff they have going on. Now, we're stuck in a world of virtual meetings. It doesn't mean, though, you can't rep your Prospanica pride. I've got my Prospanica gear here on again today. Don't worry, I am doing laundry in my sheltering here in place, but you can find a whole different line of products as well. We've got shirts, mugs, bags, hats, everything. So you can go to proforma.com/prospanica-gear, or you can just go to prospanica.org and click the store. Of course, the important thing to remember, proceeds from this go to support the Prospanica Foundation. The Prospanica Foundation benefits students. It's what helps us launch programming like this. So please support us, show your pride, and let everyone in your Zoom meetings see who you belong to. We also want to, of course, say another big thank you to Teach for America. They've been a long-time partner. They're a Cafecito supporter. Teach for America really believes in diversity. They do some amazing work just supporting the youth of America, but also their Latinx leaders and alumni. And of course, Teach for America, thank you for supporting Prospanica and our Cafecitos. So change can be stressful. Like I said a minute ago, our perspectives can shrink, they can become cloudy, our focus can change where we don't necessarily see everything in front of us or even see it accurately. I'm thrilled today to be talking about how to transform that with Michael Landers. He is the founder and president of Culture Crossing, which does some really innovative leadership work in the multicultural space. He has an amazing personal story. You can see some about him here, but Michael, let's go ahead and bring you up. It's great to have you here with us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Evan. Good to see you. And hello to everybody who's listening in or listening to the recording afterwards.
Definitely, yeah. So of course, I love that you can if you miss it live, this is something you can go back to, whether you see part of it, all of it, you want to check it again. Michael spoke with us at the conference this last year in Orlando, did a fabulous job in a plenary session there. We're thrilled to have you back again. Now I've got my laptop out today. What that means is we want you taking part in this conversation. We're not doing slides. In fact, let's see if I can do it. There we go. We've gotten rid of the slides. It's just Michael and me. So we want you to get involved. Go ahead and send your questions to the chat feature on the dashboard. We'll do our best to get to as many of those as we can. Michael, I'm going to give the floor to you and let you take over.
Yeah, definitely. And this will be a nice dialogue. And then I look forward to connecting with anybody who's going to ask you some questions. And I'm not going to tell you straight up, right, that we have the answers, right? We're going to talk today and share some of our experiences. I'll share some of my experiences and we'll explore and, have some fun and also kind of hopefully help some folks and learn ourselves. So one of the things that you were mentioning, right, was transforming this perspective. And since this has happened, I've seen a lot of stuff out there like make this an opportunity and in the face of uncertainty,
yes.
you can find some certainty. And for some people it's true, right? But what's struck with me so far, and I've been going through some challenging stuff as well, and for those of you out there who are still going through some challenging stuff with family, I wish light and some peace there. But for those of us who are still struggling on a day-to-day, of what's going on, one of the things that I've realized this week was this whole experience for me personally has been like entering another culture. And that's my expertise. So that's kind of a little bit of the bias that I have. Even though I'm from the United States, from Boston, I grew up in Latin America my whole life, 3 to 18, in Colombia, in Brazil, and Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. So I had to consistently check what I call, my mental models, the way I saw the world. And every time I moved to another country, those were put into question. I was entering another culture. And so over the years, we've helped a lot of people transition from one culture to another, a lot of times national countries, right? And the struggles that people might face when trying to adapt into a new culture, national cultures or work cultures or regional cultures. And what I was finding fascinating, Evan, was this is the first time in my experience that we all across the world are trying to deal with a new culture. We are all living in a new culture, not national, right, but global, in the sense that coronavirus is a culture. It has created a culture everywhere. Even the places, the little towns in Italy that have shut off, and inside those towns, they can live the way they lived before coronavirus, or what people are referring to as BC now, before coronavirus, right? They can live that way, but yet they are still affected because of deliveries and who they let in. And in rural towns in Mexico, I have a friend who inside the town, they're living the way they did, but they stop everybody who comes in. Even the tribe who has no contact, let's say the Amazonian tribe who has had no contact to the people outside of, in civilization, even they're being affected in the sense that they probably don't see airplanes going overhead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're all figuring this out. And one of the things that happens when we enter other cultures is it kind of challenges our mental models. And when I look at mental models, it's like when I personally make judgments, I'm comparing them to some model in my mind, whatever it is, the way a food tastes, the way a movie is shown, the way somebody acts, right? And when they fit my mental model, I tend to connect with them. And when they don't fit my mental model, I tend to crash with them. So Evan, to you, this experience so far, what has kind of challenged your mental models or a
Yeah,
mental model?
no, that's really astutely look at this as this new culture we're in, because I consider myself more introverted than extroverted. I am very comfortable sitting, well, it's just over there on the sofa, and just hanging out, just being alone, being in the quiet. And yesterday, I was kind of like, oh my God, I don't want the quiet. I don't want to be sitting here. I've been sitting here for 6 weeks, and so essentially, my entire uh, framework and way of understanding how I like to interact within my situation is not the same.
Yeah, yeah. And what does that cause?
Yeah, there's definitely a little tension you feel right here, right? And of course the sense of, well, I'll just go outside. I'm like, I don't want to take another walk. I don't
Yeah,
want to ride my bike again.
yeah,
Um, I don't want to go to the grocery store because that doesn't feel like it's safe for me necessarily, or even the people who might wonder, why is this guy here again? Is it safe for them? So there's
yeah.
definitely a tension inside.
Yeah, for example, and that tension, right? A lot of us want to kind of resolve it as quickly as we can or get rid of it, right? And then sometimes within the new culture, it's not going to go away for right now, right? And so one of the things that we look at when people go to another country, right, and they might have some challenges with this challenge to their own mental models, is one, recognizing, hey, this is the way I usually see it, and there's three kind of options that we see people do. They complain, right? Which again, I've been complaining, oh goodness, again, and then take a look at something like the mask, right? Which is kind of a little contentious in certain places, but people are like, oh, I have to wear a mask again, right? You can fight it, right? But if it's the law, which it is in some states, if you can create more conflict and say, I'm not going to wear it. That's another option that people do when they fight against the mental model. They complain, they'll create a conflict, or they'll coexist with it. I don't love the mask, but it's the rule, it's the law, I'm gonna abide by it. right? That might be a thought people have. If you look at a country like Singapore, you know, again, BC, still before coronavirus, but still true now, chewing gum, right, and spitting in public are both finable or arrestable offenses. Even not flushing the toilet after you go in a public toilet, you can get ticketed and fined.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I move there, I might be like, oh, this is ridiculous. I want to chew gum, right? And I can complain about it, or I can create conflict. I'm like, no, here's my gum, right? But eventually, I probably will learn how to coexist with it, or I could get fined or arrested, right? And so for the smaller things that we're looking at, if I spend my day complaining about things, I'm carrying that with me the whole time, and I'm exhausted by the end of the day, right? And it's very normal, right? Not judging anybody for complaining, you know, myself too, I'll complain. If I seek to create conflict with others or within myself, that's exhausting as well. And so what we're going to look at, you know, today, and I'll share some things that I've done, and maybe you can help share, and we can listen to the people as well, which is what can we do to better coexist, right? Given the culture we're living in, and the culture we're living in is temporary. We don't know when it's going to end, but I have faith that it's temporary. The same way, if I move to another country, I might move back to my own at some point, or go back to the way I had it. It might be adjusted, but it's still temporary at this point, but it feels final. And so it's harder to get through that when you're like, oh God, this is it. But how can we better coexist with each other and within our own kind of experiences?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said there really struck the chord in that it's both temporary, but I also can try to accept it and try to coexist with it, because there is that frustration of it feels like, I mean, when we started doing the cafecitos, I didn't really have much of a beard, right? And what am I going to look like in another 6 weeks? What's my life going to feel like in another 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's true. And look, when you choose to go to another culture or enter another culture, or have that experience, when it's under your own volition, it's your choice. Yo quiero hacer esto. I want to do this, right? That's very different, because I'm making that choice. And that might be, I might adapt to the situation out of positivity because I had power over that choice. But when you are forced to, or you didn't ask for it, right? There's more conflict that occurs. None of us asked for this, as I know, right? Nobody asked for coronavirus to come and to change our lives the way it has. But we have this opportunity to adapt. And when you look at adaptation, it tends to be when one culture will begin to adapt to certain aspects of the other culture. And the reason they're going to adapt to that other culture is to have a more peaceful / easier existence, right? And then that's a choice as well. Where can I adapt? Where do I want to adapt? When it's done out of obligation or need, there can be a lot of resistance to that. And what I want to look at today is how can we limit that resistance or lessen that, right? And coexist. And one of the biggest skills that we see when people adapt well to other cultures is a tolerance for ambiguity. Being able to see things in more than one way. And that's where the perspective comes in. And it's not all across the board. So what I'll look at today, and what we can chat, and we can chat with people too pretty soon, is there one place in your day today, or one situation, where you can try to possibly, if you're creating conflict, stop to do that, limit that. If you're complaining, stop just to complain about that bit and just take it for what it is, to better coexist, right? And that's being able to see whatever the situation was in a different way.
Excellent. Now I want to remind everybody while we're in this conversation, you know, Michael and I are talking, but we want to bring you in. So there are quite a few of you online right now. My laptop screen is here to take your questions, so bring them in. You know, Michael, I like that challenge there to identify some point in your day where you can begin to coexist a little bit better. How, you know, what sort of suggestions do you have for somebody who, and I guess I'll back up, a lot of times I don't notice the conflict inside until it's already kind of raging a little bit, and then it's a little harder to back up. So do you have any thoughts on just how to recognize that moment so we can work on it?
Yeah, definitely. We'll look at that moment, and I'll also do a quick thing the moment before, right? Which you had mentioned, like I feel like, because I've had similar things. So again, no judgment to you, Evan, at all. But when you're like, oh goodness, I don't want to go outside, I don't want to do that again. When I get to those points, I'm like, oh, I can't go walk down the street today, but I have a little garden, I can walk around that. And if I'm like, oh, I don't want to walk around the garden, man, I want to go do my own thing, you know? When I get there, one thing that's been helping me is there are people there have been people, and there still are people in countries who cannot leave their apartment.
Right.
Right? Spain, Italy, they're not allowed to leave their apartments, right? Unless they have a dog they can walk, or they're considered an essential person that can go to a supermarket. And kids who have not been able to go out for weeks at a time. So I try to transform my perspective to go, what do I have, right? And what some people around the world don't have it right now. So shut up, Michael, and go enjoy your garden. Okay,
Yeah.
that's one
Yeah.
thing. That's before what you're talking about, like the amygdala hijacking, that fight or flight response taking over and enraging. So a couple things there, obviously, when you feel that coming up, one thing to do is movement's great, right? So I have an 11-year-old, and she's been struggling. It's hard. She's doing a great job, but it's struggling. When I see her about to go, she, we have this little code word. She's like, Dad, I'm gonna flip my lid, right? Which means my amygdala is gonna take over, and I'm gonna be like, and I'm like, okay, stand up, jumping jacks, right? And movement automatically calms that down, right? So getting up, doing some type of movement. Obviously, another thing that helps is breathing, right? Taking a couple deep breaths will calm that amygdala down. And then the other thing before it happens, this is where what we're talking today, is being able to transform your perspective, have a different way of looking at it. So right before it happens, whether it's the frustration of not being able to go out, trying to say, hey, let me get some clarity here around what I have, right? And rather than complaining about what I don't have or creating conflict with others because of that, I want to coexist with this tension that you mentioned before, right?
Yeah.
And then do
Yeah.
those. And again, this is not like, oh, that's it, we're done, we're all good. No, it's a consistent thing, but all I'm looking at is micro behaviors. One little thing a day, maybe. And if that's too much, try it during the week, or just think about it, right? Those kind of things can kind of help calm that down and have more tolerance for ambiguity, right? Another skill that we see, Evan, with people who go to different countries and are successful at it, is this ability to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm sure there are a lot of people who are perfectionists, right? Or drive for perfection, drive for excellence. And when you go to other cultures, you are going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. And so if you have this ability in yourself to fail, that it's okay, that's going to happen, right? And I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't make it perfect. You're going to be much more successful when you go into another culture. So this culture of coronavirus, right? This is almost permission, right? Expectation that you're not going to complete everything in that day that you normally would. And it's not going to be perfect. And you're not going to, coexist with every single thing. That it's okay every once in a while to complain or be frustrated or not do all these things because you have this great opportunity because you're home more, right? And so
Yeah.
that's another skill that I find really helpful for myself too, which is like, hey, didn't do it, wasn't perfect today. Okay, I'm rarely perfect. I don't think that's not a drive for me, but still, I'm like, it's okay. It's okay if I don't do everything. It's okay if I feel really tired. It's okay if I sleep a little bit longer, right? It's okay if I need to take a timeout.
Yeah. That reminder, I think, is something that we constantly need to hear. And you mentioned this earlier about some people might be posting maybe on LinkedIn. I see this a lot on LinkedIn. There's a lot of, which is the space to do this, to talk about the things you're doing to make yourself better during this time. And for every post we see of somebody acknowledging a success they've had, we're missing all the other non-posts that person or any person hasn't made saying, I didn't do X, Y, or Z today. And it is this reminder we need to give ourselves that acceptance of imperfection. There's an interesting question that came through
Yeah, sure.
talking about sort of this environment we're in, that for some people, it may feel a little bit more natural. In that maybe you're more used to communicating via cell phone, via video chat. You may be more of a technological native, but there are other generations that have been adopting and adapting to these technological changes, and it doesn't feel completely comfortable. How do we help those who might not be as skilled in this environment because they're of a different generation become more comfortable with not just this interface, but there's this interface layered on top of the fact that the world is kind of feeling really unsettled?
Yeah. And so just to clarify, the question is how can we help other generations work through this who
Or
maybe
how can
not?
somebody who is another generation? So, just right now on our call, we've got everyone who, from recent college graduates up to people who have reached certain pinnacles in their career that are amazing, and they've been around for a number of years since the start of our organization. So we have multiple generations here. How can we
Yeah.
help? How can somebody who's in a different generation, maybe struggling with the reality of the world and the reality of how we interact, accept some of those changes and alter that perspective?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say the more and this is from my experience, the longer you've done something some way, okay. And so for me, older person here, have been around for a little bit on the planet. Something like this could be much more difficult because I'm so set in the ways of how I used to be. Where, what we're finding, some people might not have had the experiences as long, might be more adaptable, right? So we're looking
Mhm.
at that at some level. Again, personalities can shift that for sure, but just generally speaking, if you've done something a certain way for a longer time, it's gonna be harder to change, right? Anybody who has a pet, if you have a dog or a cat, and it's an older dog or a cat, or you've had an older dog and your cat, and they've slept in their bed that's in the same location for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, maybe. What's it like when you try to move that bed? They're
Yeah.
not too happy about it. They're like, what is going on, right? Or move them to a new house. They're like, I don't like this, right? Versus a younger puppy will be like, okay, my bed's over here now, right? And so those are the kind of things that we're looking at. So some things that we can do, I think if I've been doing something for a long time, right? That's really what I want to look deeper into my mental models and take a look at it. Why am I, what am I finding difficult about this, right? What am I finding difficult about this? And in order to help me get better or more fluid in that or more open to this new culture, I would like to look at the way people who are adapting to it, how are they doing it, right? So
Hmm.
in my experience, when I was traveling, I would always look at people, other foreigners, let's say, and host country nationals, and see how they did it. And they would be my blueprint, and that helped me a lot to coexist better. So when I go to a supermarket, I would spend a lot of time observing others to see how they were shopping in that country, right? And
Yes.
then if I had questions, I would find somebody else, another person, another American or Canadian or whoever who had been living in this country for a while that I was in, and ask them some tips, right? And that helped out a lot because I had a lot of times when I didn't do that and I just was floundering for a bit. So I would say seek out people who you might see who are adapting well to the situation or easier,
Mhm.
right? And if you are that person who has adapted well and are working with somebody from a different generation who you feel could struggle, offer your help, offer different ways of looking at things and doing things. Because when we don't know what we don't know, we are kind of a little left out. So if you can be that person to help the person learn what they don't know or show them one or two things, that might be something.
Excellent. Another question just came through here about your talking about comfort with ambiguity. And it's interesting that I really respond to this as well. My background is in the arts where comfort with ambiguity is just kind of a part of it. You're creating something, you never know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So I used to feel very comfortable with ambiguity. And this question here is talking about that fatigue with trying to have a comfort with ambiguity. Um, how do you, after now 6, 7, depending on where you live, 8 weeks or so of the same new altered routine where it is unknown, just reading the news every day, there's conflicting reports, even from experts. My fatigue, and I'm sure this person's fatigue clearly is getting a little high with trying to be comfortable with the unknown. Can you talk
Yes.
about dealing with that on a daily basis?
Yeah, 100%. Me too, by the way. Like, yeah, it's tiring. It's exhausting. And that's why we were saying at the beginning, like, this is the answer. Do this, done, right?
Mhm.
We always joke, right? Or like if people had figured leadership out, right, there wouldn't be so many leadership books in the bookstore.
Right.
Right. And the same kind of thing. If people have, and we haven't, and I'm not here, I haven't figured it out at all. I wish somebody would, and we could be like, oh, that's it. That's the pill and we're done. But what I do find with the tolerance for ambiguity is it's tolerance, right? And sometimes that tolerance is going to be greater and sometimes it's going to be really little to none, right? And so what I have found just personally, again, I'm not saying I always have the feel great every day. It's not true, right? Because it's fluid. The situation is completely fluid and it's conflicting and it's exhausting. So I would say if you're able to, can you take a news break? You
Mm-hmm.
know, are you, unless if it's vital for you, like you need to know, I need to know what's going on in my community today because the rules might have changed and I don't want to get in trouble and I don't want to cause any harm. But if it isn't that case, can you take a news break for a day? That's helped me a little bit, just to say, I'm gonna take a break from this because there's so many conflicting reports. The other thing is I tend to look out a lot forward. Oh, my daughter, okay, back. Is there gonna be school in September? All right. Oh no, what if there isn't? Are there camps, right? And my
Mm-hmm.
job, is my work going to come back to this? Is that going to happen? And that, while I keep a little eye out there, I try to look much, much less to, let me just focus on today. And so being present in the moment helps me as well sometimes, to just go, all right, let me just focus on now, this moment here, what's happening.
Can you give us some more tips on being present in that moment? And uh, because it feels, this is something I realized. You just mentioned summer and you mentioned the fall, and I have two kids, and it really struck me with an urgency that it's May, and I'm not even aware of the fact that it's May. And what that means is June comes up, and I don't know where the kids are going to be going, what they're going to be doing in the summer. And suddenly I'm spinning in my head to June, July, August, September, October, and this moment of now is gone. How can
Yeah.
we remain? What are some tricks to remaining present?
Yeah. So, well, I'd say one thing when you get into that future mind, which we just talked about, is what can you control? And so I'll just tell myself, like, oh, I can't control that right now. I can't control the summer. I can't control the fall. I can't prepare for it. I can think about it and I can brainstorm about it and I can write down everything I'm feeling. That helps me sometimes. I'll just put all this down. And then I have two charts and I'll have, this is what I can control. This is what I can't. And then typically when I have that future mind, all of the stuff is on the can't. And that can create obviously more anxiety. I can't go. But if you look at it and go, I can't control this right now. So do I want to now knowingly give my energy to it? Right? It's very similar when you're angry with somebody, you're essentially giving your energy to that person or that thing that you're really angry about. And it's kind of interesting because you're like, if you're angry about that or angry with that person, why do you want to give them your energy?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it's the same thing. Are you giving your energy to stuff you can't control or stuff you can control? And that's will bring me back sometimes to the fact that, okay, I can't control that. But sometimes I have to go through that process, Evan, to write it down or think it out. And then
Yeah.
before I go down the hole too much, I will stop and say, okay, well, I can't control that right now. Right. And sometimes if there's someone you can talk it out to that can listen to you, that's helpful too. And you mentioned you having kids. There are a lot of us who are sheltering in place with others, and some people without. You know, I'm sure people here are like, "Am I going to go to university? Is my university going to start the
Mm-hmm.
same way?"
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of unknowns at this point. The people why we're having such mixed messages is even people who are competent in leadership. Every day it's new for them as well. So even though that might not be so comforting for some, I think all of us are actually going through this at the same time.
That moment there that you just said, we're all going through this at the same time. As you were talking, I was imagining too, if we weren't talking about the pandemic and our situation, but what the metaphor you gave, which is world travel, cultural travel, being in a new place, that idea of being present, you could get, and I've done the same thing where you've gone to the grocery store and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to buy anything in this place.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
get so stressed out by this one item that you forget to realize I'm in a grocery store in Paris.
Yeah.
I should enjoy just this piece of it, and pay attention to all the other things. We're almost amazingly out of time. If we could talk about this one question, and this probably comes back to some of the stuff we've said
Sure.
already, but I'd love
Sure.
to hear it rephrased again, talking about Zoom meetings happening all the time and just the ease at which I think our maybe our 5 o'clock normal cutoff because we got to get home has bled into 6, or it could bleed into 7.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of exhausting because you're at your virtual desk all day. Quick tips to help us think about our time and that length of time and how to get through that exhaustion.
Yeah. So I think that there's a couple things. If you're able to control or have some influence over how your meetings go within your company or with others, can you create some boundaries between them. So it does, because I have a lot of people are going 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, because in their office, they would give themselves 10, 15 minutes to go to the next meeting. But because they're all on Zoom, we don't have to go anywhere.
Mm.
And because we're all on Zoom, we can start at 8 a.m. And I would push back a little bit on those situations and go, yeah, even though we're not commuting, that commute still helped me kind of transfer into going from home to work. And we've taken away those transition times, right? And those transition times are really important if you utilize them to get ready for the next meeting, to stand up, to breathe. And so I would encourage you, if you have the ability, even ask, it can't hurt to ask if you don't have the power, to go, can we create some natural transition times? Because we've taken those out in this Zoom world. So that would be one, right? And then within that, same thing was with boundaries. Can we instill some more of the boundaries that we had from before, because they were useful, they were helpful. They might not have been as quote unquote efficient, but they brought ourselves, the human aspect of it, what we need to in order to transition from one to the other.
That's powerful. That's really amazing. I think that's true. We forget that what we used to fuss about, maybe that commute, was a moment of transition, and we need to create those in our daily lives still.
100%, 100%. So find opportunities to do that. The one other thing that I'd say, we said tolerance for ambiguity, ability to fail, and the third skill that we found for last thing, this is just a little quick thing for people if you're still on, is sense of humor. People who had a good sense of humor do better when transitioning to other cultures. And it doesn't mean that they can make jokes, but what they can do is laugh either at themselves or find laughter in things. And so if it's funny cat videos, if it's bloopers, whatever it is, if you can find some opportunity to laugh during the day, it'll also help your mind and your body. And so transitioning between Zoom videos, you got some bloopers up, you got some funny videos,
Yes.
I don't care what it is, boom, there you go. That might help out a little bit as well, just to kind of keep you going.
Excellent. I mean, that's not just accepting imperfection, but now honoring and really
Yes.
thrilling within it. That's wonderful.
Yes, exactly.
Well, somehow it's at the half hour plus a couple of minutes. I thank you to everyone who had questions. Michael, thank you so much to you.
My pleasure.
Before we shut off, I've got two quick announcements. First announcement, please, in a second, you're going to be asked to take a survey. Once that pops up, please take this survey. It lets us get better. We know what's working, what isn't. And here's the new thing I want to tell you. Michael is going to generously give away a number of his books. And so if you're interested in receiving a copy of this book, there is a "what more do you want to tell us" question on the survey. There you go. There's the book. Go ahead and tell us in there you were interested in receiving this copy. We're definitely going to prioritize Prospanica members in this, but please go ahead, fill that survey out. Let us know you're interested in the book, and we'll get that to you.
Yep.
Next week, we have another Cafecito talking about uncertainty again. We're going to be hanging with Valeria Alloway, who is an entrepreneur. She also is a coach. She does some amazing stuff that her just work life is very much helps people deal with uncertainty. So we're going to dive into that some more. The registration link is not yet up. We're making some shifts with the platforms we use, so I will email that to everyone. You can find it on prospanica.org/webinars when it's put up there. You can also see all the other Cafecitos. Once again, Michael, thank you for your time, your brilliance, and for the offer of the book.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Anybody else who has other questions you didn't get asked, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Michael Landers, Culture Crossing, and email me, message me there. And I'm happy to answer anything that you have questions for, or if you want to connect about something, I'm available.
And also, are you on Instagram? Somebody just asked.
I'm not on Instagram, right? But on LinkedIn and Twitter at Culture Crossing. Yeah.
All right, perfect. You can find him there.
I'm not on the gram. I did the funny quick thing that there was a coach, an ex-NBA coach, I know we have to go, but he was saying he was coaching a lot of young people, and he's a little bit older, and the young people were like, "Yo, coach, you got the IG?" And the coach was like, "No, man, I went to the doctor. I'm fine. Like, I don't think I have that." Right?
Excellent. So
Yeah.
we can verify Michael does not have the IG.
I do not have the IG. I'm good, but I need to get it, I hear.
All right. Well, hey, everyone, have a great week. Stay home, stay safe, and stay in touch. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks so much.